The Brainiacs are ready.
Welcome into Leather Brains. Your host here, Slapdog, and it is episode 169, baby.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm joined today by my boys, Scotty Del Rey and the Big Yeti himself. Alan could not make it. So I'm glad to have you guys here, though. I really am. We have a fun episode, I think. It's going to be a little bit different than usual. It's the slow season, fellas. It is the slow season when it comes to NFL content and NFL discussion. So we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to have our conversations about the headlining news. And then after that, we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to have a little bit of a draft scenario because it's draft season coming up. So what we're going to do today is we are going to draft our biggest pet peeves. So we're going to do a 4-round snake draft. We're going to pick our pet peeves and we're going to discuss them. Be fun, lighthearted, entertaining, just a good little change of pace from the hard-hitting NFL content that we are usually discussing. So,
well, and I'm the king of pet peeves, so you guys have no chance. When I was making my list, I thought I might have a problem because this is way too easy. I have a list of like 150 things. I'm going to choose 4 of them.
That is kind of dangerous. Because I struggled towards the end. Like, I have a list of like 5 or 6, maybe 7, just in case, depending upon what you guys were going to pick. But I figured you would excel at this because there are a lot of things that I think irritate you. So
honestly, I should have reached out to Scotty for like a mock draft or something for this pet peeve. Or like a ranking or something.
I'll give you a few runner-ups once we're done.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Can't give them out too early. Let's start things off by talking about Stefon Diggs here, because this is the main headlining news since our last episode and one that certainly needs discussion. Stefon Diggs was traded to the Houston Texans. The Texans traded a 2025 second, 5th, and 6th round picks in 2025, and then the second round pick would become a 3rd round pick if Stefon Diggs does not re-sign with the team. I was kind of surprised by this initially. There have been a lot of conversations about Stefon Diggs and his time with the Bills and also with the Vikings and how he's been a little unhappy with his time at the Bills, and he was kind of wanting to get out of that situation. He didn't come out and say that, but there were murmurs, there was chatter in his camp that was the case, and it turned out to be the case. The Texans were a little bit of a surprise to me, to be honest with you, but I, for one, really like this. It was something, like I said, that initially shocked me, but I started thinking about it, and I was like, this actually, I really, really like this for both the Texans and potentially the Bills as well. I think it certainly hurts the Bills, but I think the Texans won this trade, and I'm really curious to pick your guys' brains on what you think in regards to how all this shook down.
Yeah, I think the landing spot really surprised me too, but the result of the trade really surprised me too, in the fact that Buffalo's eating $30 million of salary cap for Stefon Diggs. So they're basically trading him for pennies, like just get out of Buffalo. So I'm really curious to know what the full story is there in Buffalo, because it seems like there's a lot of things that have been unsaid. Potentially a lot of locker room drama. Who knows? Like, we're all speculating at this point because we know there's been a lot of rumors about Stefon Diggs over his career of not being a good person in the locker room. I just want to know what's said in there, man. I want to be a fly in the fucking wall. Yeah.
Well, I've said it for a long time that when you think of a diva wide receiver in the modern day NFL, if you look that up in the dictionary, you'd see Stefon Diggs. You can see it in his mannerisms on the sideline. You see it when he's yelling at his starting quarterback, who, by the way, is an MVP level quarterback. You'd think maybe he'd earn a little bit of respect. And, Stefon Diggs is a great player, but when you look at his production over the last season, he certainly wasn't as useful as maybe he should have been. And that could be the case for a lot of reasons. He's obviously getting a little bit older. He was pretty much the only weapon as far as pass catchers go on that Bills offense, so he was getting all the attention. Josh Allen did miss some big throws to him. Josh Allen also hit him in the hands in some big moments when he dropped it. So to me, it was surprising to see it actually happen, but if you would have told me beforehand that it was going to happen, it's like, okay, it's not really that surprising. We kind of saw some trouble in the waters ahead of time for the last couple of seasons. So to me, I think the Bills, they they didn't get a lot in return right now, but just being able to move on and close that chapter and look toward the future, I think could be a big benefit for that organization.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that I think need discussed, right? Stefon Diggs is 30 years old. So a lot of media heads are talking about, and not necessarily even media heads, but people commenting on the media heads are stating he's washed, he's getting old, he didn't do anything. I've seen a lot of Buffalo Bills fans over on Twitter or X or whatever we call it on our profiles. When we kind of were talking about that and the trade that had happened, a lot of Bills fans were coming out and saying like, good, we're tired of him. Is he washed? I mean, has he started to show his age a little bit more? He has historically throughout his career been an upper echelon wide receiver. We didn't see that all year last year. We saw it in flashes, and we saw some games in which he was completely gone out of the picture. Is it fair to say that Stefon Diggs is on a decline in his career at this point?
Well, I think that if you put him in a situation like he had in Buffalo, where he was the clear-cut wide receiver one, he had to be an alpha, then I think that's probably a fair statement, yes. But going to the Texans, he's not going to have to fill that role. There are a lot of weapons in there, including C.J. Stroud, who may be the best up-and-coming quarterback and sort of the new talk of the town when it comes to the NFL. So I think in this sort of supplementary role, he's obviously still going to garner a lot of respect from defenses, but he's not the only one that has to make stuff happen now. And I think he might thrive. We might see a bit of a resurgence of Stefon Diggs in this new high-powered Texans offense.
I think as far as Stefon Diggs being washed, it's a hard question for me to answer at this point, because we have to note that Buffalo did switch their offensive coordinators about halfway through the season. I think it was around week 9 or so is when they switched to Joe Brady as their offensive coordinator. And Stefon Diggs' route tree actually switched completely from what he was good at throughout his career in Buffalo. And he wasn't being targeted nearly as much under Joe Brady, which is interesting. I don't know if that was by design of Joe Brady saying, hey, we don't think you can beat some of these cornerbacks anymore. Or I don't know what that memo is. So it's hard for me to like look at his production drop off at the end of last year and be like, yeah, he's washed. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of role he's going to play in Houston, because Nico Collins and Tank Dell, they are primarily outside receivers. Stefon Diggs, he's primarily an outside receiver as well. If you look at their snap counts from last year, they all played outside 70% of the snaps. So it's like, okay, who's going to slot towards us? Who slot towards the slot? Haha. And I tend to think that's going to be Tank Dell, but who knows? Slovis, the offensive coordinator in Houston, he's a very good minded coach. So I'm curious to see what he plans to do with Stefon Diggs. It's going to be interesting as the season unfolds.
I'm of the belief, like you said, that Dell moves more into that slot role, just given his size. He is a little bit smaller than both Collins and Diggs, and I could see him kind of transitioning more into that slot type role.
Well, not to mention he also doesn't have as much experience, so he's going to be easier to sort of shape into the receiver, into the weapon that you need, as opposed to a guy like Stefon Diggs who's been doing it at a high level for so long. It'd be difficult to tell him to change everything, but for
Sure.
someone like Dell, I think he could do it easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you look at this Texans offense. I think this is a good move. I've seen a lot of people saying the Bills fans saying we fleeced the Texans, and the Texans, this is a ripoff. I think it was a genius move by the Texans, because you look at it and it's one of a couple scenarios can play out here. You either get Stefon Diggs at still a very high producible rate in return, so he comes in and he is immediately an impactful player, which is obviously what they're hoping for. They still think he has gas left in the tank. And what'd you give up for him? You gave up a second, a fifth, and a sixth. And there's a lot of people saying that second round pick is great. Well, the catch is, if he doesn't get re-signed, because when they did this trade, it wiped out Stefon Diggs' contract. So after this season, he is a free agent, right? If he doesn't re-sign with the Texans, that second now becomes a third. So let's say hypothetically, Stefon Diggs has lost a step and he doesn't have as much gas in the tank. The Texans after this season can say, you know what, I'm done. You showed us what you got. I think we're just going to go ahead and we're going to pass on you. You can enter free agency and go find some other team that wants to sign you. So that second now becomes a third. you paid a third, fourth, and a fifth for Stefon Diggs. And that's where I'm like, you know what? That's not the end of the world. I get it. Those picks do have value, and we as dynasty players maybe don't look at third and fourth round picks nearly as juicy, but this is the NFL. And that's where you can still hit on usable players. So they carry weight. I get that. But I think the Texans are betting that Stefon Diggs still has a lot left to give, and that's why they did this trade. And I think it also makes sense for the Bills, because I am of the belief that there's been a lot of drama going on in that locker room, and the Bills are probably fucking tired of it. And they're like, you know what? Let's just be done with this guy. So from an offensive standpoint for the Bills, I think this is a really devastating blow, because not only did you lose Stefon Diggs, but you also lost Gabe Davis this offseason. And now your two wide receivers at this current junction are Curtis Samuel and
Khalil Shakir.
Thank you, sir. So your wide receiver room is definitely not in great shape. Is this an indication that the Bills may want to kind of move around in the draft and look towards a first-round wide receiver?
I think it's a real possibility. I mean, the Bills need a lot of help. Obviously, they lost a ton of pieces this offseason, but as we've said, as long as you got Josh Allen, the window's always open. So I do expect them to try and make some money moves to the best of their ability to be competitive, because you want to make sure that you're capitalizing on this time when you have an MVP-level quarterback.
And the Bills currently sit at the 28th spot in the first round. So right now they're kind of looking at guys like Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, potentially Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. Troy Franklin should be available around that time. But I'm more curious to see if they're going to trade up for some of the big names like O'Dunes or Neighbors or Harrison Jr., which obviously those guys are going to cost a lot more. But I think, they're at a position where they might be willing to do so with the wide receiver room they have.
Let's just shift. Let's shift the conversation ever so slightly to a dynasty football conversation. I just want to have a very brief conversation about this potential. You look at the draft that's coming up here in just a few short weeks. You have Arizona at number 4, right? And that's where they're expecting the first wide receiver off the board at this current juncture, given all of the picks previous and all the movements. So it's most likely going to be Marvin Harrison, right? Let's say the Bills do trade up from the Chargers and they draft Odunze and or Neighbors. From a dynasty perspective, at the 102, what are you guys doing? Because I see a lot of conversations floating around on Twitter, like the Bills offense, there's a huge vacated market for targets right now in the wide receiver room. And then you have Kyler Murray, who also needs a wide receiver one. Is there a legitimate argument where, let's say it is Neighbors and to the Bills? Like, would you prefer Neighbors at the Bills over someone like Marvin Harrison at the Cardinals?
I think when you compare Marvin Harrison Jr. and Neighbors, it's very hard to, because they are both elite players, right? At this point, we're kind of like nitpicking what they do well. But I could see an argument where somebody says, oh, Neighbors has a better quarterback in Josh Allen, so I'm going to take Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr. I would totally understand that, and I wouldn't fault anybody for that. But I think both Arizona and Buffalo, they need a wide receiver one. So either of the rookie wide receivers that would go there would be like, yeah, I would be okay taking either of those guys, knowing that they're locked in wide receiver ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I tend to feel the same way, but I do see that floated around as some potential, and I felt like it garnered discussion. Is there anything else we want to touch on as far as Bills and or Texans are concerned with this trade?
I think from a dynasty perspective, when we're looking at Houston's wide receiver room, I think all those wide receivers are going to take a hit, obviously, because nobody can sit here right now and predict that Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell are all going to be useful for fantasy. I think they're all going to have their down weeks, so it's going to be hard to gauge them on like who's the true wide receiver one. Obviously, people want to point to Diggs, but who knows? Nico Collins might have those weeks where he goes 5 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. And you're like, shit, I should have started him.
It's just like the Gabe Davis situation when Diggs was with Buffalo.
Exactly. So I think right now, if you have Nico Collins or Tank Dell, you're holding them, because people are just going to look to kind of get them from you for super cheap. Stefon Diggs, obviously, he's a 30-year-old wide receiver, so you're not going to get much for him at this current point. So I think you just got to hold on to that room and pray, something happens during the seasons where Tank Dell or Nico Collins become relevant again.
Another interesting question, not fantasy related, is Okay, the Texans have made a bunch of moves. Obviously, we saw what CJ Stroud is capable of doing. When you look at this offense, they are a number what in the AFC? Where do they rank in terms of offensive firepower and capability? Because this team is getting damn close to topping the charts.
That's a really good question. Just off the top of my head, I think they are a top 3. And I put the Dolphins ahead of them right now. And then I was going to say the Chiefs, but that situation with Rashee Rice just kind of got interesting. So I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I'll put them at 3.
I think that's kind of where I'm thinking.
I think the Bengals, from an offensive firepower standpoint, I still think the Bengals are probably the top dog in town. With T. Higgins still there, and you look at that, and we're just talking just offensive weapons. We're not talking about like best offenses in the NFL. And then the Ravens, I'd maybe even, it's got to be Dolphins, and then Dolphins, Bengals, Dolphins, Texans, Ravens is probably how I would do that. So, but I mean, and then there are some spicy ones too. I mean, the Jets are there, the Chiefs are there. I was going to say the Broncos is a joke, but I didn't know if anybody would get it. So I don't know. I tend to agree with you though. The only thing that I would be doing is, flipping this back to a fantasy perspective, I'd probably be looking to sell Diggs if I could. And I could still garner some value out of him, because I do think that there is going to be a decline in value. I think there was a decline in value as soon as he went to the Texans, because there's a lot of mouths to feed. Let's not forget Joe Mixon's there too now. And I'm not saying Joe Mixon is Saquon Barkley, but he's still a usable running back in both the run and pass game. So there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. And I tend to agree with you. I think everybody on the Texans offense kind of took a hit from a fantasy perspective with Diggs coming there. I would have concerns about Diggs and his output moving forward. He is 30 years old. We know that he's kind of getting to that point where he is going to start declining. It's just that you're holding a ticking time bomb, and can you still squeeze value out of it? So I would certainly be exploring trades. I'm not saying panic sell him, but I would definitely be interested in trying to offload him while I can, because I do think that he will see a decline in production. I think the only thing that you're crossing your fingers on is that there's a higher the rate in which he sees the ball, he sees higher value targets, and that's where I think you're really hoping.
Well, and I don't think selling him in a lot of leagues is going to be that much of an issue, because, turn around with the sales pitch maybe to a casual football fan who's just in the league with their friends, and you say, hey, Stefon Diggs, we know what he is, and now he's going to play with CJ Stroud in one of the best offenses in the conference. Well, that's a pretty good deal, and I bet a lot of people would bite on that trade. So it's definitely worth putting some feelers out there and seeing what you can get in return.
For sure.
Slaps, I'm glad that you brought up the value, and I don't mean to drag this conversation out too much, but I saw today on Keep Trade Cut, they had posted that CJ Stroud is now the quarterback 1, according to everybody that visits keeptradecut.com, for whatever that's worth. But I found it very fascinating that he's a QB1 after he finished QB11 on the season last year. And I get there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of recency bias with how he looked in the postseason and everything that's going on in the offseason. I completely understand that. But it's not like he's an elite running quarterback. That, if you're a running quarterback, we prioritize those guys a lot more because of their rushing ability. Rushing touchdowns get you more passing touchdowns. But he finished outside the top 10.
Yeah.
Well, he was dealing with an injured roster for part of the year too. I get the hype. I mean, I understand. I agree with you. Ultimately, from a fantasy perspective, you have to prioritize the guys with rushing upside. But I understand also, we talked about Patrick Mahomes. It's not like he's an electric rushing quarterback. It's not like Lamar Jackson. He's just a playmaker. And at that time, before this last season, the Chiefs offense was electric. And so you wanted a piece of that. And the Texans certainly have the ability to get to that level this season with all the weapons that they have. So I agree with you ultimately that I think there are certain quarterbacks that you want to take over him, but he's right up there in my opinion.
I don't think there's a doubt that CJ Stroud is a top 5 dynasty quarterback.
Sure.
And I get your argument that, he dealt with injuries on the offensive side of the ball last year. But Mahomes had Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice late, and Mahomes was still a top 10 quarterback, whereas CJ Stroud couldn't sniff it. And I understand Stroud missed a game as well, so that plays into the factor too, right? But to be valued as a quarterback 1 right now, that means I could trade.
You could trade him
CJ
for
Stroud
Mahomes.
for Josh Allen. for Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray plus some at this point. Like if I could get a package of Kyler Murray plus like a 2025 first and something else to help my team, I'm doing that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I agree with that. That to me, and I did see that. I saw the post kind of floating around on the Twitterverse, and I was kind of shocked. And I keep my eye on, I don't think keep trade cut is an end all be all for when it comes to fantasy trades in the Dynasty format. But it's a nice metric to go look at and just kind of give you a little bit like, are we even on the same page here? And it kind of helps give you a little bit better of an understanding of it. So that to me was wild when I saw that. And I could not believe that he was number one. Certainly, I agree with Scotty. I think top 5, or maybe you had said that, Yeti, but one of you guys had said that. And I'm like, yeah, no, that hits. I think top 5 is very realistic given what we saw last season. But number 1, you can tell me I can trade CJ Stroud for Josh Allen. I would do that because you don't get the rushing upside with him. So yeah, that to me is absolutely mind boggling. But let's move on here, gentlemen. Let's talk about Scotty's favorite sport. Lane Johnson and Jason Kelce were spotted at a sporting event. And in fact, were even part of this sporting event. I just wanted to hear Scotty's comments on this. They were at WWE, which I know that Scotty is a huge fan of. I think, what is it? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is probably one of your favorites. So why don't you talk a little bit about this, Scotty? Did you have any care to comment on this?
Well, I didn't know that this happened because I didn't see it because I am an adult, and so I don't watch fake professional wrestling. It's a soap opera on stage, and just a little sneak peek into the pet peeves. If you're an adult and you're watching WWE, man, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? I mean, if it makes you happy, by all means, but it makes me happy to talk shit on it, so I'm going to do that for as long as I want. And WWE is embarrassing. It's a sign of cultural decay.
You do know that John Cena follows us on Twitter, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's a big fan. But listen, John Cena, I respect John Cena and his willingness to give to charity and do good things in the community. So keep doing that. And if WWE facilitates it, then by all means. But WWE is terrible.
Okay. Well, that's all we have to say about that. Let's move on to Darren Waller. It came out that he is still unsure about whether he wants to play this season. I think that's really fucking selfish. I'm just going to say that right now. Yeti, we got a couple things to talk about with former players for the Raiders. Darren Waller being one of them. I think this is a pretty shitty move on his part. How do you not decide if you want to play football or not at this point? Because the draft is in like 3 weeks, dude. And Darren Waller really hasn't played a full game or a full season of NFL football, I think, in the last 5 or 6 years. So I think that he pretty much is just a healthy scratch for the Giants anyway. But how do you not tell your team? How do you not go to your organization and say, I would like to play or I would not like to play? Because the draft is coming up and they kind of need to know this shit, dude. So I think that's incredibly selfish. I just wanted to throw that out there. I think that's a douchey move, in my opinion.
And the Giants should come back and say, well, I'm unsure if we want you on our team to begin with.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Because he hasn't played.
Taking up all our training tables. It's fucked up. We got no room to treat anybody else.
Yeah, and then Derek Carr. Derek Carr had come out and said this is hysterical. Derek Carr can't wait to play against his former teammate Max Crosby in 2024. I can't wait to watch Max Crosby beat the ever-living shit out of Derek Carr. I think that's hilarious. Like, why are you rooting for that? That's what I don't understand.
Right.
Yeah.
We all saw Max Crosby go up to Gardner Minshew last season and say "little ass boy" every time that he hit him. Well, I hope that he goes up to Carr and is like, "You little ass bitch," because Carr doesn't want any of that smoke, man.
Yeah. No. Well, you know for a fact that Max Crosby is not, like, during the game, he's not going to be like, "Oh, I missed you, dude." Like, he's going to come out and want to kill you because that's what Max Crosby does. And not to mention this Raiders defense is pretty scary all the way around. If I'm Derek Carr, I'm like, I do not want anything to do with that game. I might call in sick. I might have a sick day whenever we play the Raiders.
All it's going to take is one Max Crosby sack, and then Derek Carr is going to be throwing ducks or scrambling for his life and go 15 for 40 with 2 picks. So
we might see his eyeshadow start to run.
Yeah, there's going to be some tears running down that. And then the last thing I just want to talk about is the Rashee Rice incident. I just want to give a little bit of an update for anybody who is not super familiar. Obviously, we're all familiar at this point with what has happened. But I did a little bit of digging as far as the potential charges that he may or may not face to kind of give everybody a bit of more of a legal perspective into the situation. So I'm just going to run through this very quickly. Rashee Rice admitted that he was the one driving the Lamborghini and he also owned the Corvette. So he faces a potential third-degree felony charge due to the injury to others, and he could face 2 to 10 years in prison for that charge. Because he left the scene of an accident, it's a 1 to 5 year potential prison sentence, and if the injuries sustained by others are not deemed serious, if they're not deemed serious, then it would be 1 to 5 years in prison. If they are deemed serious, that prison sentence would then get bumped to a 2 to 10 year potential sentencing for that as well. Additionally, there was marijuana in the car. It was under the legal limit in Texas. It was less than an ounce, but it was found in the vehicle. And in the state of Texas, it's kind of worked in the legal way of which it's reviewed in a case-by-case basis, and they apply discretion as advised. So he still could potentially face something for it. I know that everybody's saying he's not, and I just want to throw that out there. It is a potential. So all in all, he could face up to 20 years in prison. Not a good look, right? And Scotty, you're a Chiefs fan.
Yeah,
I know.
I just need to do something real quick.
Yeah.
I'm a Chiefs fan. Hello.
Hey.
Roger Goodell. You've had our backs for years.
He's paying the refs under the table for you, too.
You've been rigging the NFL for us for so long. We just need one more thing. Just one more thing. I need you to make this go away. Use your commissioner powers. I promise to never boo you at the draft ever again. Please, for the love of God, just make this all disappear.
You sound like an old, according to Alan, who has joined us over on Twitter.
He must be talking about WWE.
Yeah, he probably
He agrees with me on this point.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah, for sure.
I got to ask the question from a fantasy football perspective, not even an NFL perspective, because it is what it is, right? Like we can't change it. But what we can change is the people who own shares of Rashee Rice, some of which may even be here in this room with us right now. If you owned him in a dynasty format,
Yes.
are you exploring potential trades to get him off your roster, given all of the information that I just told you? Would you care? Like, and we previously said, like, yeah, you hold him. If you could get the 206 for Rashee Rice right now, would you take it, Yeti? In a 10-man Superflex league? Like, is that something where you would say, you know what, like, it's not worth the potential danger of this guy going to prison for the next 4 to 20 years?
So on previous episodes, I've said that I'm not going to sell Rice at any point. And I still stand by that, just because I don't think for what Rashee Rice could be on the field, I'm not talking about anything off the field, what he could be on the field, you're looking at a guy who could be a legitimate fantasy wide receiver 1 when he is starting consistently for the Chiefs. And at this current point, you are not getting that kind of value for Rashee Rice. If you look at his value on Keep Trade Cut, which I know is just it's a good tool to use to see where everybody else is thinking about where these guys are at right now. Rashee Rice is he is a wide receiver 30 in value at this current point. So there's no chance that I'm selling a guy who I think, in my opinion, he could be a legitimate fantasy wide receiver 1 for a second round pick or a old veteran at this point. I think it's silly, and at this point, you just need to hold him unless you get an offer that's gonna, if it matches a true value or your evaluation of Rashee Rice, which would be like a late first round pick, and you're not going to get that.
Okay, Scotty, how do you feel about that? I mean, you don't own any shares that I'm aware of Rashee Rice.
I do it in my other Dynasty league, and I tend to agree. I mean, the upside is just too good, and you don't want to sell guys low. I mean, that's the bottom line, especially when they have such upside. You don't want to take a potential star on your team and sell him for pennies on the dollar because of something that hasn't been decided yet. So I tend to think, okay, if the trade's good, if they're willing to actually trade you for Rashee Rice instead of this, behind bars version of Rashee Rice, then okay, we can talk about it. But at the end of the day, the upside's too good to pass up on for something that we don't know how it's going to conclude.
Well, it could conclude with you losing everything in the gamble that is fantasy football. I'm going to propose to you just a couple trades to see if I could get you to bite and sell Rashee Rice in this instance. Would you sell Rashee Rice for Hollywood Brown straight up?
No.
Okay. Would you sell Rashee Rice for Christian Kirk right now straight up?
No.
Okay. Would you sell Rashee Rice for Stefon Diggs straight up?
No.
Okay. Would you sell Rashee Rice for Rachaad White straight up?
If I needed a running back, maybe. It kind of depends on how your team is built, but I tend to lean towards no on that.
Okay. Rashee Rice for George Pickens.
I don't think so. There's too many questions in that offense. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't think so.
That one's actually kind of interesting to me because I think that one. Ooh, that's close.
You're playing fire. You're playing with fire a little bit.
One question mark
because
for another question mark. Which one's got the higher upside?
the one that's actually on the NFL field.
Yeah.
Right. And if you
Could
look
be
at Russell Wilson's career, he has tended to lean towards X receivers like George Pickens. And I think George Pickens is one
Except
of
for
those
Cortland
guys that's
Sutton.
going to have a breakout year. Well, Cortland Sutton
He was
did have a good fantasy year,
Yeah.
a decent fantasy year when we're looking at the Broncos roster. So I think I'm going to still lean Rice. That's a pretty close one, though.
Okay. What about Jaden Reed?
No.
Okay. We'll do one more. DK Metcalf.
Upside's too good.
I'm going to
Not
be
doing it.
stubborn and say no.
I would do that for DK Metcalf. I think the ceiling is a lot higher for Rashee Rice, but your floor is jail. Your ceiling is DK Metcalf. So
Yeah, we're a
I
bunch
would
of
take DK
degens,
in
though.
that.
You take the risk. Take the risk.
No,
on
I
the
understand.
upside. Put the money on
And
the
I don't own any shares of Rashee Rice, so it is what it is for me. And you both do, so I just figured I'd pick your brains on it a little bit because it's kind of interesting, and it is unfortunate. I don't know. I go back and forth like on my personal perspectives as far as the whole Rice thing is concerned because you're an idiot. You are a dumbass, but we all make mistakes, and thankfully nobody was, had life altering injuries or anything. And I don't know. I really am kind of torn because you look at something like the Henry Ruggs situation, which is incredibly unfortunate, and he also made one single mistake, and unfortunately it did cost somebody their lives, and that is something he's going to have to deal with his entire life. And I'm sure Rice is not going to forget this instance, and thankfully nobody was injured to that degree. So I don't know. I am interested to see how this plays out from a legal perspective as well as potential NFL punishments and see what happens. I'm of the belief that no matter what, I think I'm going to say this. I think depending on the severity of the legal situation, if he doesn't go to jail, he's still going to be suspended for like 6 to 8 games this season is kind of what I project. So that's my own personal projections, but we'll see what happens with the NFL.
Well, I've already sent Roger Goodell several letters, so I think he'll be
And
fine.
he's on my dynasty team, so I think he's fine. He's going to be suspended for a game.
I didn't know you had those kind
Maybe a
of connections,
half.
fellas. Okay, let's go over to the Pet Peeves Draft. Like I said, it is a little slow in the NFL season. We figured we'd mix it up a little bit, have a little bit of fun, and it's draft season. The draft's right around the corner. So we're going to give you guys a 4-round snake draft, picking our pet peeves, and have some lighthearted conversation about it. So without further ado, Scotty, you have drawn the 101 today.
Oh, I didn't expect that. I don't think I've ever had the 101 in anything.
You taking
Welcome.
Caleb Williams here?
Oh, that's a tough one. Tough one. No, I think there's a very clear number one. This is going to be interesting because I don't think any of us are going to agree on the value of any of these things. Obviously, it's very personal.
I disagree. I have mine tiered. So
I do too. I do too. But I don't think you're going to agree with my tiers, and I won't agree with yours, and vice versa.
Okay.
But the number one thing that pisses me off more than anything else on earth, my 101. It's not the WWE. It did make my contingency list, in case you were wondering. But the number one thing that pisses me off more than anything else is when adults use baby words. When somebody says, "Oh, I got to go potty," And oftentimes it's parents that are around kids, but then they just get used to using these words and then they start saying it to each other. That shit drives me insane. Potty, tummy, yummy, all these words, there's no quicker way to make me want to just punch you in the throat than if you are a grown adult using these. I'm not going to do that. I don't support violence. But it does make me feel a certain type of way if you use those words. So those words, in my opinion, should be banned. I don't even think we should use them with kids. I think if you use those words, you go to prison, you get deported into the sun, whatever it might be. Those words, persona non grata, they should not be allowed ever again.
I don't know what persona non grata means, but I really want to start saying it because it sounds really cool. Okay, so let me ask you this, though. Are you allowed to talk like a baby? Like, does that bother you, or is it more the words that you use? Like, could I be like, hey, Scotty, how was your day today? Like, would that be okay? Or because I'm talking like a baby, you still...
No, I tend to think, as a general rule of thumb, the purpose of language is to convey ideas to one another effectively, and we should try to adhere to that principle as closely as possible in every conversation that we have. Try to speak clearly, try to speak eloquently, try to get your point across, and when you're putting stupid inflection on words to make yourself, like to make someone feel like a child, or even doing it unknowingly, it's like, just get it out of your vocabulary. It's not necessary. You don't need to talk to a kid like that. A kid can use the word stomach. Kid can use the word bathroom, and if they grow up in this coddling bullshit household where they give out participation trophies when you have to go to the bathroom, yeah, if Alan thought I sounded like an old earlier, imagine right now.
No, he's fuming.
Yeah, no, that's a clear number one for me.
Okay, but I just want to specify, is it the words and the vocabulary used, or is it the way in which you say the words, or is it a medley of both?
I mean, I would say it's both. I don't really experience people talking like a baby. I think the
what if I was
words are
talking
much
to
more
a
common.
baby and I was like, oh my gosh, hello? Like, is that going to bother you?
No, I think up to, like, I don't know, 8 months old, you can do that. After that, time to get a job, time to get a tie. They got to grow up. They got to grow up at some point.
Get out there and start shucking corn, son.
Might as well start right now.
Yeah. All right. Okay, well, what a great way to kick us off. Yeti, you have drawn the 102. Is it Marvin Harrison for you?
Oh, Daddy, my tummy hurts here. I'm a little nervous. Okay. So with my pet peeves, I kind of went off the wall here. I kind of wanted to have some fun with this and turn it into fantasy football related.
Oh.
So my biggest pet peeve with fantasy football is when people's team sucks like halfway through the season and they just stop setting their damn lineups. Nothing makes me more upset in fantasy football than that. Like, you signed up to play a whole season. You paid money, most likely, to join my league, and then you just stop playing. What the fuck, man?
I actually really like this one because I am in a lot of leagues that I'm in. I'm the commissioner, and I don't have any rules set. But I'm well aware of like the happenings of the league because you kind of got to have the top down view. And nothing pisses me off more than looking and saying like, "Oh, this guy beat this other guy by 70 points," and then I went and looked, and it's like, "Oh, he didn't set half his lineup." Like, that drives me nuts just seeing it as an outsider. And I'm like, dude, you're fucking me here. You're fucking the whole league over because you have to play starters. But I put an asterisk there. And the reason I do that, I've done this once where I joined a league. The league was so fucked up that I just stopped setting my lineup after week 2. It was my fiance's family's league. And they
still let you in the family, huh?
I know. It was originally supposed to be a 10-team league. They bumped it to a 14-team league. The commissioner loved the guy to death. Terrible commissioner. He didn't change any of the rules. So we started like 3 flex people and 3 wide receivers. Like, you're starting like people who were sitting on the sidelines at the time. And I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I stopped setting a lineup because he didn't even put the forethought into it or change any of the rules or anything. So I agree with you, but I have done it before. So I just want
to, as a means of like protesting, fighting the man, it's acceptable.
Well, and I told him like that's the other thing too, is like I said, I've been a commissioner for a lot of leagues. I don't mind setting it up. It's not that hard. I told the guy, hey, if you need help setting this up, let me know. Like, I'll get it all set up and squared away. And he's like, Nah, don't worry about it. I got it. Showed up late. The draft had started. He didn't change any of the rules and then found out he couldn't change any of the rules. And I was like, this is an atrocity. So I agree with you, though, Yeti. That's a great one.
I also don't like how Yeti's playing 3D chess here, because if we do any graphics post in our draft, he's just placating to our audience, which is, I think you should get docked points for that.
You got to know our podcast.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to bring in a fresh perspective, but nobody's going to relate to anything I say.
I get it.
I don't know, Daddy.
I'm not.
I got 3 more picks. I got 3 more picks to bring it around. And by the way, I got no problem with the word daddy. That's got a time and place, my friend.
Oh, God. I see you licking your lips there.
Amen.
The one I brought to the table here at the 103, this one I think is probably one of the most inconsiderate things a human being can do. And I've never seen it happen, but you know obviously that it does happen because you see it. And I just want to catch somebody doing it and act of it one singular time, and I will have absolutely no doubt in my mind I will confront them about it. And it's leaving your shopping cart in the middle of the parking lot. I think that is one of the worst things, and it's so frustrating because you're driving in, you see, oh, there's a spot right there, and you kind of weasel your way in, and then as you're about to turn, there's just a shopping cart there because it's sitting in the middle of the way because somebody's a lazy piece of shit and couldn't take their cart and go put it back in the cart corral and or go put it back in the stall or in the store, excuse me. I think you're a piece of shit if you do that, and I think there's a special place in hell for you if you do that. And I hate you as a human being, and I don't want you listening to this podcast. If you're the person who's doing that,
Jesus,
go screw yourself. Because nothing makes me more irrationally angry than seeing that.
There's actually a guy, I don't know what platform he's on. I wish I knew more about him so I can plug him, but because he's a national treasure. He's got like a Twitter account or something where he just takes videos of himself confronting people who do that. Like he just walks around and finds people and confronts them. It's fucking hilarious because all those people, like, there are lots of bad things that human beings can do. And I don't think any one thing makes a human being realize, oh shit, I am a terrible person, than getting caught leaving your shopping cart in the middle of the freaking parking lot. It is maybe the greatest measure of a human being's like personality. If you are incapable of walking your cart 8 feet to get it out of everybody else's way, like that is about as inconsiderate as you could possibly be with like a minor offense. That's about as bad as it gets.
It is. And like your legs fucking work. I know they did because you got the damn cart out here. Go put it back.
That's one of the things people always say. Like there are like with the guy who takes the videos, he'll do it and there's like a mother with her child and she's like, well, I didn't want to leave my kid in the car while I walked the shopping cart back. And it's like, lady, you walked around the entire store with your kid. You couldn't walk an extra 8 feet with your kid.
Not only that, but you got out of your car and probably carried your kid with you. How'd you get you didn't just get out of your car and your kid was magically in a cart. Like that is the worst excuse ever. And I am praying I catch somebody do it at a grocery store because I have absolutely no problem confronting them and just being like, hey, do you have a problem? Like, are you okay? Take your cart and go put it back where you got it like a grown-ass adult. That to me, hands down, biggest pet peeve, frustrates the hell out of me.
Guarantee those guys go home, talk about other tummy hurts, and watch WWE. It's all the same group of people that we're talking about.
Yeah, and they're watching WWE because they're not setting their fantasy lineup either.
Oh,
yeah.
True.
And that leads me, actually, it's back-to-back picks here for me because I have the 103.
Oh, we're going snake style. Shit.
Yeah. All right, so...
Commissioner advantage right there.
I guess. Another thing that really irritates me is, and I just experienced this recently. I was recently traveling with my fiance to a wedding, and we got on a plane. And there's this one motherfucker, this one guy, whistling the whole time. He is whistling. We're waiting in line. Like we're waiting in the line to get on the plane, and he's just whistling behind us. We had been traveling half the day. We're tired. We don't want to fucking listen to this guy whistle. And then you scan your little ticket or whatever, and you wait in the little terminal area as you're waiting to board the plane, and he's right behind us. And he's not even whistling a tune. He's like whistling to hear himself whistle. And my fiance looks at me, and I look at her, and I just kind of make one of those faces like, I'm about to punch this guy. And she's like, just shook her head and was like, just leave it alone. We get on the plane. I swear to God, this motherfucker sits 3 seats behind us, whistles the whole goddamn time. And it's not a tune. It's just, I'm like, what is going on here, dude? And then he stops. The plane takes off. I don't know if somebody said something to him. I'm not making this up. As soon as we land, right on cue, starts whistling again. And I was about to lose it. Stop whistling in public. Just stop. There's absolutely no reason to whistle in public, especially obnoxiously in a plane. So that's my number 2, whistling in public. There's a time and a place to whistle, and it's not in an airport terminal.
I've never had that problem.
Yeah, same. But I'm curious, like, what if it was a good song that he was whistling? Like, what if he started whistling Mr. Brightside?
I'd be impressed. But if I wanted to listen to Mr. Brightside, I'd put my fucking headphones on. Like, I don't need to listen to you whistle it, right? Now, if you're at a concert and you want to whistle Mr. Brightside while it's playing, by all means, whistle your fucking heart away because I can't hear you because I'm listening to Mr. Brightside at a concert.
Okay, what if this guy just got back from the hospital and he just found out he beat cancer and he is just happy to be alive and he just wants to live up the rest of his life with a smile on his face, enjoying every second of it? Does that make you the bad guy? You don't know his situation.
It probably does. I'm probably the bad guy, but I'm okay with that because I'm not the only person that doesn't know that this man just survived cancer. I'm just one of the many people that are tired of hearing this guy whistle. So stop whistling in public.
You think he was afraid of flying and that's why he didn't whistle in the air?
Oh, he's just nervous?
He was just very scared
and then
got on the plane and was just terrified and then got off the plane and was happy to be alive.
Maybe.
Whistling again.
Ooh, okay.
I don't know. It
Honestly,
drove me nuts.
when I get nervous, I sweat. So if I could find something else like whistling that would help
Have you
my
tried
nerves,
whistling when you're nervous?
Maybe, I'm getting on a plane soon. So maybe I should try to just whistle the whole time.
My recommendation, don't. Just sit there and fucking sweat. I'd rather you sweat than whistle. Especially because I'm not on a
tummy
plane
starts to hurt a little bit, so maybe I should do that whistling.
Oh my
I'll
God.
turn on like WWE highlights too and watch Jason Kelce or something.
There you go. What'd you bring at the round 2 there, Yeti?
All right, so staying on topic with the fantasy football theme that I have going on, nothing makes me more upset than dropping a young, promising guy early on in the season that I drafted with like the 15th or the 16th round pick. Because I didn't think they would pan out to turn into a star, kind of like Puka Nacua or Kyron Williams. It hurts, man. It hurts when you drop those guys and you see them turn into what they became, a top 10 player at running back or wide receiver.
Do you have an example of someone that maybe even last season you did it to? I can think of one for myself.
I feel like in one of my leagues, I dropped Adam Thielen.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. I did the same thing.
He dropped off halfway through the season, but for like the first 8 weeks, we were like, oh shit, Adam Thielen, like, is he back?
I dropped him after week 2, and I'm like, fuck this guy. Like, he was a dart throw, late round pick anyway. Who cares? Somebody picked him up, and then I just watched in the corner, and I'm like, I just gave up a top 10 wide receiver because I'm an idiot. And he did fall off towards the end of the year. So it made me feel just a little, you get that like small little sliver of satisfaction because you're like, all right, he did end up kind of blowing it. But
that's
there was
the best
a while.
thing about being a sports fan is that oftentimes we just get to root for people's failure, and we just want people to fucking suck. And we're just like, please God, just suck. This conversation makes me really nervous because in my other Dynasty league, I'm 3 players over the roster limit because I've been making a bunch of off-season trades, and now I got to make some hard decisions, and I just know whoever I drop is going to be a top 10.
That's a secret of Dynasty. Either convince all your league mates to give you more roster spots, or just constantly have a depleted roster so you can grab guys as dart throws. That's the life I live, where I'm like, I always just kind of want to have one spot open just for a dart throw guy that I can kind of just stew on for a little bit.
And Scotty, if you have any questions, feel free to send a question to our mailbag. We'll answer it live on the podcast.
I appreciate that. I might take you up on that.
Great plug. All right, Scotty, what'd you bring for the to round us off for round 2?
Getting off of fantasy football again.
Loser.
I am going to bring back people picking their fingernails. The sound of someone, especially girls, they get that like shellac done or whatever, like the kind of fake nail that goes on top of your nail, and then it starts wearing down or it chips, and then they just sit there and just click. And that sound makes me want to die. It makes me want to shrivel up and die. I absolutely hate it. My wife is guilty of this. I'll be sitting on the couch, and I've developed a spider sense sort of situation where when I just see her hands move together, I'm just like, whoosh, and just smack them apart. Just immediately, just not even thinking about it, because that sound, it gives me goosebumps all the way down my back. It is disgusting, and I absolutely hate it.
It's the sound then. It's not the action, it's just the sound.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, it's kind of both. I am kind of weird about fingernails. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched like a war movie or something when someone's caught by the enemy and they're getting tortured and they start pulling off their fingernails. And just the thought of that is like if I was a POW and I had some intel that would save humanity, and they said, "Tell me, or we're going to pull off your fingernails," I'm joining their team. Like I will be
scream,
against
"Oh,
humanity.
not my fingy"?
No, I would not say that.
All right.
I mean, if they wanted me to, I would do anything to avoid that outcome.
Ouchie. Yeah, I guess I haven't really thought about it. I can't relate to that, to be honest with you, because I don't have anybody in my life that sits there and picks their fingernails. I pick my cuticles, but like that's kind of a weird thing that I do.
As long as it doesn't make a sound, it wouldn't bother me.
Yeah, it doesn't. Okay. Well, Scotty, it's your turn again here as we enter the third round. So go ahead and bring us back to the next thing for you.
Okay, this is a hot topic that I'm bringing up here. This is a fight that I've had with everyone in my life, really. My wife, my immediate family, everybody. When you put dishes in a dishwasher,
oh yeah, you're crazy about this.
You rinse the dishes. If I open the dishwasher to put a plate in there and I see 4 other plates with like food caked on the plate, it is absolutely disgusting. Like, it's so gross, and it takes an extra 5 seconds to just rinse off that plate, maybe hit it with a little brush and get the food off the plate. And everyone's like, well, that's what the dishwasher's for. You look at the Cascade commercials, look how clean they get. Like they're buying into big soap or whatever that thinks they can just work magic. You close the dishwasher and poof, magic happens. No, it's disgusting. Get the food off your plate before you put it in the dishwasher. There are those things that they sell that say dirty and clean that mark whether or not the dishwasher has been run. Yeah. That would not be necessary if everyone was just shoving their food-covered dishes into the dishwasher. The fact that exists is an indication, hey, maybe we should clean off these plates before we put them in the dishwasher to be disinfected.
I think you're missing the point. I think you're missing the point of the dirty clean thing, because it's an indication to show if the dishwasher has been ran or not.
Yeah, I understand that, but if you don't know if the dishwasher's been ran and you open it up and everything is covered in shit, then you know they're all dirty. But if you actually do the dishes properly and you wipe them off, it's sometimes difficult to tell if the dishwasher's been run or not without a closer inspection. So that's why.
But I'd still like to know. Like, I don't want to grab like a cereal bowl that I used a day ago and I just rinsed out. Like, it still needs to be washed.
Right. That's why the thing exists. It lets you know that you still need to wash it.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying.
I've had this conversation with your wife about your cleaning of the dishes. Look, I've been a guest in your home for many a times, and I've lived with you probably longer than most friends would tolerate me. And I did find it comedic. It wasn't my home. I did whatever, it was, you wanted things cleaned to the utmost of clean when it came to dishes. I'm going to do it. I get what you're saying. And I've seen it. I think there's most people, and then there's Scotty's level of clean. And I don't think most people are going to hit Scotty's level of clean. I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, if you have ketchup on your plate, yeah, rinse off all the ketchup. But there are times where, like, got a little mark on there, and I'm like, whatever, the dishwasher will get it. That's what it's for. That's the realm that I'm in. Mm-hmm. If there's a tiny little mark on there, I'm okay. If I eat a burger and there's like a little bit of burger juice, I don't know, which you probably grease is fair to say, and you rinse most of it off and you miss a little part of it, it's fine. I'm not going to freak out about it. I'm going to throw it in the dishwasher because that's what a dishwasher was made to do, was clean up the shit off the plate. I've seen the other side. I've seen Scotty's side. Dude, you just completely clean all the dishes and then you put them in the dishwasher.
No, that's exactly how my wife is too. It
Yeah.
has to be spotless, and then it's going straight into the dishwasher. Like,
Well, that's not crazy. What the dishwasher does is gets to a high temperature and uses soap to disinfect the dishes. It keeps stuff from growing where your food used to be. What you do before you put it in the dishwasher is get the giant chunks of food off so they don't
I'm
clog
there
up
for
the
that.
dishwasher. And it's very gross. And by the way, it takes an extra 3 seconds. You got some grease on your plate? Just rinse it. Just rinse it. You don't want
but
the
if
grease
I
just
miss
sitting
a
in your
spot,
dishwasher.
if I miss just a little tinge of a spot,
a little burger juice.
yeah, it's just
Little
burger juice.
burger juice.
All right,
It's a little
Yeti,
flavor for next time.
what do you got? Middle round 3.
Ooh, with the 302. My fantasy pet peeve.
You're a dog, dude.
Yeah, dude, I came prepared here. My third fantasy pet peeve are game time decisions
Oh,
in prime time games.
oh.
I'm talking Sunday night games,
It's the
Monday night
worst.
games, when you're relying on, your wide receiver 1, running back 1, or potentially your quarterback 1. They have a game time decision, and you don't know if you're going to play them. And
It's
then
the
you end up
worst.
playing the other guy, and it all just goes to shit. Why can't we just decide like the day of, like, or a couple of days before? Yeah, he's not playing. Why do we have to wait
Oh
till
my gosh.
right before?
Even like when the 12 o'clock game or the noon window games come on, we need to know 10 minutes prior. Like, just make a fucking decision, because us fantasy football savants, it is the worst decision. I know exactly where you're at. We've all been there as fantasy players, and it is one of the most devastating decisions you have to make, because you want to start Josh Jacobs, but he's got a bum ankle and he may or may not play, and he's playing on Monday night. So what do I do for fantasy? It's the worst. I think the NFL should really step in, because the NFL, the fantasy football community, I think actually is a huge reason a lot of people are into the NFL. I do believe that. I think that, and I'm not going to say everybody, but like you have your fair weather fans, and then you have like regular fantasy football players, and then you have the people who played fantasy football for just a couple years, and they really start to recognize names and like, oh, I should watch this game, and then all of a sudden they're buying Sunday ticket every year like myself, and they're glued to the TV on Sundays. So fantasy
Even
football
with-
was a great entry to it.
Even with gambling, like player props are becoming
Yeah.
such a big deal right now.
Yeah.
It's hard when a player is a game time decision, because either A, their lines won't be out until like right before, or the other players on their team won't have lines up either, because Vegas is still like, what do we do? Like if they don't play, then the other players' lines are going to go up. So it's just it's a shit show.
Which it is interesting. Obviously the NFL has really embraced sports betting over the last couple of years, and you're seeing FanDuel or whatever advertise during NFL games, and they're embracing that. So at some point you kind of do have to address it. The fantasy football thing is kind of an aside, but when it comes to gambling, okay, people are putting their real money on this stuff because you told them to, like you gave them the platform to convince you to do this, and now you're not going to give the information necessary for people to make sound decisions. I think that there's actually probably something coming to a head with that pretty quick.
I would be willing to bet that you're correct. I do think that we'll probably see something here in the next few years where they're going to kind of crack down on that a little bit, and you're going to have to provide information a little bit sooner than game time. Because while fantasy football is ancillary to the actual NFL game, I do think that betting aspect kind of goes hand in hand with fantasy and lends some, like, you're going to have to figure it out, and that kind of intrinsically also solves that fantasy football situation. But this is a good one. I really like that. It is very frustrating, and that is a huge pet peeve of mine as well.
Or if your star running back has a headache and might not play, it might be a good idea to put him on the fucking IR list for that week. Fucking Arthur Smith, you bitch.
He had diarrhea, explosive
Yeah.
diarrhea.
Nobody I dislike more in the NFL than Arthur Smith. Well, yeah, it's pretty close. All right, my round 3 to wrap up round 3 here is people who don't use turn signals. If you don't use turn signals, you are a dirty old piece of shit, and I fucking hate you. I despise you as a human being, because we're all going to the same place. If your turn signals don't work, okay, I understand. But your turn signals work, because I see that your brake lights are on when you're slowing down, and I know that they're different bulbs, but I would presume that if your brake lights work, your turn signals also work. Stop cutting people off. Stop just swerving in front of people. Stop even just merging over in front of people without putting your turn signal on. Not only is it inconsiderate, but it is kind of dangerous. And I don't think you're a good person if you just neglect to use your turn signal because you're lazy. it's a flick. You're driving a car. That is the legal part of driving a car, is using your turn signal to let other people know when you're going certain areas. I live in the Charleston area. I haven't lived here my whole life. I'm from Nebraska. We're all from Nebraska. And it happens everywhere down here. I think that, I don't know who's teaching these driver's ed classes, but it's somebody who's probably blind, because the drivers here are the worst people I've ever seen. And turn signals are non-existent down here. The one that really frustrates me is you're at a 4-way stop and somebody's going to turn, but they don't put their turn signal on. So you assume that they're going straight, and it happens all the time down here. And I'm just like, what are you doing? Just put your turn signal on.
The worst is when you're trying to get onto some, a couple lane road, the speed limit's 45 or 50, and you see a guy coming, and you could probably pull out in front of him and turn right, and it wouldn't be a big deal, but they're coming in fast enough, you kind of want to wait. So then you just sit there, and then 5 seconds before they get to you, they turn on their turn signal. And it's like, dude, what do you think? You've been staring at me the whole drive down this road. What the fuck do you think I've been doing? Like, I've been waiting for you. And it's just, that does drive me insane.
My wife and I actually just had a conversation about this, because I hate when people don't use their turn signals, and I flash my lights at them. Whether it's daytime or night, I will flash my lights, and my wife will.
I'll turn my brights on.
Like, get them, Yeti.
Oh, I turn my brights on.
It's like,
I will.
I know. I would
ass.
be the worst cop in the world, because I'd probably like pull over somebody and be like, "Hey, what the fuck? You have tail lights. Use them. If they don't work, then I'm giving you a fix-it ticket."
Yeah, you're bringing up cops. Actually, brought up an ancillary one. I experienced this today driving in rush hour traffic on the interstate, and a freaking cop pulls over a guy for speeding in rush hour traffic. And it's like, dude, everyone could be going 50 over the speed limit, and that would still be safer than stopping a car on the interstate in rush hour traffic for a minor offense like going 8 miles an hour over the speed limit. It should be absolutely against policy to be pulling people over in the middle of rush hour traffic for speeding. It's not like they're going that fast. It's rush hour traffic, right? They're not going to be going anywhere quick. Why the fuck are you holding up everybody else on earth when they're trying to get to work just to give this guy a $20 speeding ticket?
Well, here's my argument to that. I agree with you, but if they're like, especially like I said, I live in the Charleston area, and people here do not know how to drive. And I just had this today. A Camaro just almost smashed into my car because he was just like swerving into my lane, and it happens every day. If you're like a dangerous driver like that and you're in rush hour traffic, you absolutely deserve to be pulled over. But if you're just going with the flow of traffic and you get clocked by the cop's a douche, because we're all going the same speed and you just decided to pick me out of the lineup. Like, that's kind of screwed up. So I understand that. All right. Let's go over to round 4, and then we'll get the hell out of here. I will finish this thing up. My last pet peeve I have brought to the table are people who constantly ask questions when you're watching a movie or a TV show.
I have that one on my list too.
If my fiance is listening right now, I hope that you have wrote this down, because every single time, not every single time, but a lot of times, we'll be watching a movie, we'll be watching a TV show. I've never seen the show. She's never seen the show. And she asks me questions about it. And I'm like, we're watching the same fucking thing here. I don't know. Why are you asking me this question? And or if you were paying attention to what we were watching 3 minutes ago, you would know what happened.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than when you're watching a movie with somebody, brand new movie, neither of you know what the fuck's going on. You're trying to learn. That's the point of watching the movie.
Yeah.
And they're on their phone, and then they look up and go, "Oh, who's that guy?" It's like, first of all, I may not know who that guy
is. He killed Jamaris.
Yeah.
Where were you?
You want me to tell you the entire story? We're sitting here in the same room watching the same thing.
Like, read the Spark Notes version if you're not going to watch the damn movie. It drives me nuts. And it happens to me frequently. And I'm like, dude, just shut it. Either watch this or don't subjugate me to sit here and watch this with you so you can ask me questions about the thing I really wasn't interested in watching to begin with. That's my last pet peeve. And I will bring it over to you, Yeti.
All right. My last fantasy pet peeve is when I put a lot of time into my pre-season cheat sheets, and I have all my rankings down, getting ready for the draft. And I'm just so much time.
I'm gonna interrupt you for just a second.
Okay.
Do you make like a legitimate cheat sheet?
Yeah,
really?
Like I'll use templates from other companies. I'm not going to say their names, but I'll use like their templates.
No free ads.
And then I will make kind of my adjustments to who I think is right, who is wrong, and I'll kind of put my own little flair, and I'll put notes. as to like if there's any offensive changes, like offensive coordinator changes, whatever the case may be. I put little notes just to remind myself, hey, this guy might be good later on.
Okay, sorry,
but
continue.
yes, I do make my own cheat sheets, but I hate when I spend all that time getting ready for the draft and somebody doesn't show up to the draft, they auto draft, and then they end up either winning the league or having a better record than you all season.
Yeah, sometimes we get a quick reminder of the fact that fantasy football, there's a lot of it that's just bullshit luck. Like, you could put a lot of research into it, and at the end of the day, 1 or 2 injuries or whatever, someone gets fired, and everything changes. Sometimes auto-drafting might just be the way to go.
Did you guys have Puka Nacua last year? And when you were making your mock drafts or your cheat sheet, you have Puka Nacua like top 5 wide receiver?
Well, I got a lot of concussions. I put him on my list initially, and then took a trip and fall, forgot about it. Otherwise, I would have drafted him 1 overall.
Damn. Yeah, no, that does suck. And it's funny. Like we've been, we have our league of record that we're in, and it is bullshit. Like this is the second time I've lost, and we do this show. I can sit here and talk to you about fantasy football players all day, and like at the end of the day, there is just some luck that goes into this game, and it's calculated luck, obviously, because you're trying to calculate your luck, and that's why you pick certain players. But yeah, that does suck. It's the worst because we've all had it happen where somebody just auto drafts and then they don't even know what their team is and they do intrinsically not set their lineup. And you're like, will you just please make a trade with me because I really need a running back for this week? And you're not even paying attention. And then they're all, yeah, I get what you're saying. And that's a good one too. It's just all your fantasy ones that you brought to the table today, Yeti. It's found a soft spot in my heart because they are spot on. Scotty, bring us home.
All right. I want you guys to know I have 7 more to choose from for this last pick. But I have made the decision. I ranked this one number 4 earlier today. I'm sticking to it. I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but it seems like all women in my life have the exact same mental wiring in this one particular aspect of life, which is there's something magical that happens the moment I leave a room that makes them realize they need something from me. And it's like, oh, we'll be spending the 3 hours together, and then I walk to the basement, and the second my feet hit the last stair, hey, can you come out? I need something from you. It's every freaking time. It drives me insane. I'll just be upstairs in the bedroom. I'll walk downstairs to the main level. The second I get down there, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? Like, dude, come on. Like, we were right next to each other for so long, and it seems like it's just like if it was a one-time thing, no big deal. If it was a couple times, no big deal. Every freaking woman I interact with on a daily basis does this, and it just drives me absolutely insane. There are differences between men and women. This is just one of them. There are lots of good things, lots of bad things. This is just one of them, but this thing in particular drives me effing crazy.
So far, all I've gathered from this experiment is that Scotty needs to have a one-on-one conversation with his wife.
Well, she's guilty of a lot of this, but she's also the best person on earth, so I give her a lot of grace.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, you're good now. Brownie points.
Yeah. But before we round off here, maybe I'll just read through some of my my last ones before we just log off. I've got 6 more. First one is chewing with your mouth open. That drives me crazy. The sound of people chewing is very, very annoying.
Yep.
Slow walkers in crowded places, especially the grocery store, when you're trying to go get your stuff and somebody doesn't even give a shit that they're surrounded by people and they're walking half a mile an hour. That drives me crazy. When people ask me how long I've been a Chiefs fan now that they're winning, they're like, oh, are you a bandwagoner? How long have you been a Chiefs fan? You just like them because they're winning? No, I've been doing this my whole life, been dealing with it forever. People ask questions about a movie. We already went over that one. Oh, coughing and sneezing in a group of people with just no regard for anybody around you. Like, I'm not really a germaphobe. I know we talked about the dishes thing, but that's the only real thing that I'm clean about. But we were playing cards the other night. Well, not the other night. It was a while ago. But with my brother, and we're playing cards. So literally, we're all touching the cards, and my brother just leans over and sneezes in his hands like this, and then just picks up his hand of cards and I'm just like, dude. That is disgusting. Like, he just had no regard for it. So when you're coughing and sneezing, just do the Dracula thing, the elbow rule, whatever it is. And then the last one is WWE. Grown adults who watch WWE. Drive me bonkers.
Well, I'm glad we covered that when we talked about Jason.
That's it. That's all I got. I could probably go on for hours, but I'll stop.
Well, I appreciate it. Gentlemen, I appreciate you guys bringing all of your pet peeves to the table here today. It was fun. It's draft season. Maybe we'll do one next week. Who knows? It was good to mix it up a little bit because it is a little bit of a lull period here in the NFL before the draft. And it was good to do it. So I appreciate you guys joining me today. For all you brainiacs who did tune into us either on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, we do greatly appreciate it. And it does mean the world if you could just hit that subscribe button, man. It truly means a lot to a small podcast such as ourselves. And that's it. That's all I got, gentlemen. Let's get the hell out of here. We
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out leatherbrains.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.